This is the Hope Not Nope podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope.
Welcome to the Hope Not Nope podcast. If you are new here, I'd love to share kind of the style of which we record these podcasts, just in case someone's new. But essentially, at the beginning of each episode, we answer a listener's question. And so if you have a question related to human performance or sports or injuries or life, faith, hope, really anything, leadership, like we love answering all sorts of questions. And so at the beginning of each episode, we answer a question. You can submit those questions either by commenting, depending on if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, or you can go to our website and submit a question there. But we answer the question, and then at the end of each episode, we share a hope story because we always want to be sharing the way that we're experiencing hope in our lives, the way that we're seeing it in other people's lives, and we just want to leave you with a little bit of encouragement to go on with your day. And so that's our style of podcasting.
You know, we used to do the hope stories in the beginning, and then we shifted them to be in like the second half or later part of the episode, so that way we could honor the question, answer the question, and then get into it. Now I'm almost wondering if we should have like a hope story alarm that's like set randomly.
That'd be so
like
fun.
5 minutes and wee hope story alert, and then we got to stop, go to the hope story, and then come back to the question. No, we won't do that.
we won't do that, but it reminds me of Dylan's master plan to. Do you want to share them?
No, I don't want him to take the idea.
Oh.
No, we'll share it. Because if someone can create it, awesome.
Yeah. You can create it. Please don't steal it and like talk to us and we can team up with you instead.
Yeah. So before we get to the question, I'll share it real quick. That, working with the military and tactical athletes, it's interesting because the sprint demands are different than any other type of athlete. Like typically an athlete that's a field athlete or court athlete, they have a warm-up period before they're sprinting in the game. A tactical athlete can go from sitting for 7 hours to needing to spring up and sprint to get their gear to then get to where the emergency is happening. So we've realized, like, okay, a good prevention program has sprints in it, but a better one would have random sprints that just alarm them at a random point in the day. Boom, get up and sprint, ready, go, to prepare for the demands of their job.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome if they're in the middle of a meeting and like their alarm goes off. Sorry, gotta go do a 50-meter sprint or whatever it is.
And have to yell, ka-chow.
Ka-chow!
Or that's what the alarm could be. We'll have to like check with Disney or Pixar, whoever made cars.
Right.
And see, can we use that as the alarm instead of, man, it's ka-chow. Get up and sprint.
Oh, that would be so cool.
All right. So what's our question?
Our question is from a listener named Gina. And Gina says, I've always been an athlete, but I'm newer to lifting weights. I'm finding discomfort and awkwardness with a back rack forward lunge, but if I do a front rack backwards lunge, then I'm fine. Do you have any tips to kind of help with this like awkwardness that I'm feeling?
Gina, thank you for the question. A lot of factors at play here, and I'll do my best to answer this. But I think the first response that I have is I'm just amazed that Gina has been an athlete and has been one of these athletes that has been able to just be a pure athlete and not have to train in the gym as much. A few of them have enough talent to just kind of sneak through, while other ones are like working as hard as they can at the gym to be able to do their sport. The Chiefs used to have a fullback that was not athletically gifted, that he had to spend so much time in the weight room, in the gym, in warm-ups to be able to do his job somewhat athletically on the field. And so this is almost like the inverse of this, of just like, yeah, I'm an athlete, I move well, but I'm like kind of new to weightlifting now.
Right.
Or like, yeah, a lot of athletes don't get that. So so shout out to Gina for being just a pure athlete.
Yeah, it's awesome.
To answer the question, we're going to get into some biomechanics, but I want to make sure that the listeners know that biomechanics, the modern research of biomechanics have debunked the idea that they are related to injury. the way that you move, correct form, posture, whatever that is not related to injury. Load is. Mm-hmm. But the way that you move can shift the load to a particular area, and then that can be an injury risk. So biomechanics on themselves are not an injury risk, but how the biomechanics shift a load to an area does create an injury risk. So there is like a similarity, but there is a difference that's happening in there. So with lunging in the position of the barbell, whether front rack or back rack, and the discomfort, the first question I would ask is like, is it happening at a particular load? Like, is this at 90 pounds? Is this at an empty barbell? Is it at 90% of your one rep max? Like, where is the discomfort happening? Because it may be as simple as, hey, you're just not ready for that load yet. We have to bring it down. And it doesn't matter if it's front rack or back rack or forward lunge or backward lunge, it's just too much load. And your body's just not ready for it, hasn't built up for it yet. So that would be like the first thing. The second thing would be like, well, where is the discomfort? Is it in the back? If it's, well, she said back rack, right? Mm-hmm. So in the back rack position, so barbell going across the back of the shoulders in here, like it's not uncommon for athletes to have shoulder discomfort just from being in this position with their shoulders coming forward. If it's a front rack position, well, maybe it's in the wrist because they don't have the wrist mobility to get into a good front rack. So is the discomfort in the shoulders? Is it in the back where loading it in a front rack position may help because you get more of a front side or anterior core contraction, or you're fighting to keep yourself upright, uh, or from the elbows from dropping down. So you're using more of your mid back, but then you're using your lower core to help stabilize that position as a counterbalance. Or is the discomfort in the knees or in the hips or in the ankles? So there's a lot of factors at play here. So I'll break it down to kind of the simpler factors other than just load, but one being the difference between a forward lunge and a reverse lunge. Mm-hmm. And then the difference between a front rack and a back rack and how that can change how this plays out. So if you're doing a forward lunge in which right, your feet are starting underneath you and then you're stepping out and the foot that you're stepping out onto is taking more of the load, and that's the one that's going to be lunging down to the floor and back up. The foot that's moving, there's now that foot moves, it hits the ground, and now it has to decelerate and then accelerate back up in a stepping position. In that position, there's going to be more of a bias to the anterior part of the thigh, so like the quad and muscles that are on the front of the thigh. When we go to the inverse of that, a reverse lunge, the working leg is staying stable underneath the body, while the trail leg going backwards is acting as the balance point. But the one underneath the body is the one that's taking more of the load. In that, there's not a stepping, like anterior deceleration that needs to happen because the leg's already in place. So when they step back, it's going to shift it a little bit more to the posterior chain compared to the anterior chain. Mm. So example of this that can get pretty nuanced is if someone has like a jumper's knee or a patellofemoral pain, and we're starting to load back up into wanting to load that tendon, but we want to grade how much force it's taking. Well, we can start with a reverse lunge that's going to have a little bit less stress on that anterior component. And then if they do well with that, then we can progress to a forward lunge, which is going to add a little bit more stress onto the quad and patellar tendon. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a nuanced answer to the knee, right? And then with a front rack, back rack position, that's going to change where you're fighting to find stability or how you're doing the movement, which is another important point, that it's not necessarily the movement, but how the movement is performed. Because a back rack movement can very much become a good morning low back base exercise if the movement's completed in a way that isn't allowing the legs to get loaded. So if you, let's say you're in a back rack and you go to do a reverse lunge, you step back, you have the weight going across your back, and let's say that you kind of hinge and dump your chest forward, what's your first position in getting out of the bottom of the lunge? Extending your back up to upright and then standing. So now this exercise that's supposed to be a leg dominant exercise has now become a back dominant exercise because of that hinge point that's happening. A front rack position, you'll prevent that hinge from happening a little bit because if you're in a front rack and you hinge forward in your chest fall, what's going to happen? That barbell is going to come crashing off of you. Not a good thing in a lunge. There's not a lot of space to clear out from there. So the front rack position can help mitigate that of the low back taking more of a stress if there is what is called a good morning fall or a stripper fall in that movement. So I know complicated into the biomechanics, we'll pull it back out into the surface. So one, what's the load that's being used? Two, where is the discomfort? If the discomfort's in the knee, you might tolerate a reverse lunge more than a forward lunge. If it's in the low back, you might tolerate. So if it's in the low back and you're hinging and dropping the chest forward in a back rack, well, a front rack position might help you to stay more upright where you're not getting that good morning fall. And I think that kind of covers the ground superficial answer without diving further into all the little nuances.
Sure. Now, I know that Gina mentioned, basically she's using a barbell, whether it's the front rack or the back rack, as well as she's lunging, not, say, split squatting.
Right.
But depending on where the level of discomfort is, there could also be the reality of, hey, grab a kettlebell and do a goblet, like hold it in the goblet position, or even two dumbbells, holding them at your sides.
Exactly.
And you're still going to be loading the legs in those different areas. It's just going to look a little bit different, and you're not using the barbell, so it does change a little bit of that, as well as and you can speak to this more because you're the doctor and I'm just the girl, but like with a lunge, you're stepping forward or backwards, where if it was a like split squat, you're just moving up and down, correct? And so it looks like a lunge, but you're not taking that step. So really it's just up and down. So depending on also where your level of discomfort is, and if you're really new to weightlifting, maybe you could ease into the barbell stuff by using the goblet, kettlebell, or the dumbbells, or using a split squat rather than a lunge.
Yeah. And to be completely honest, at higher loads, I do not like loading athletes lunging with a barbell. Uh, again, I get that like some weights can get limited and like they've beat the gym, so there's not heavy enough kettlebells or dumbbells, so then you have to go to the barbell. But if you're going heavy and you have to bail on it and you're doing a lunge, there's not a good place to bail. You either got one leg in front of you or one leg behind you. Like to me,
sacrifice one of them.
yeah. To me, the risk is higher than the benefit, and that's why we personally like using heavier kettlebells or dumbbells because you're also getting a lot of grip strength in doing that. So it becomes a even more beneficial exercise because you're getting more things out of it. And that's a beautiful point too, is like the discomfort, if it's in the back, it may not be that like the chest is falling forward and hinging and it's creating a lot of force or a lot of torque or force demands on the erectors of the low back. It could just be that you're compressive sensitive and you have a loaded barbell, and that's going to give a decent compression force that holding some dumbbells at the side may decrease that a little bit. And you brought up another thing that I want to mention too with the forward lunge versus the back lunge. Just think of the phase when you're coming up from the lunge compared to a split squat. In a split squat, your feet are staying staggered. They're not leaving the ground. So you're getting more of a vertical force factor. When you're doing a lunge, you're not just pushing upright. So like if you're doing a lunge, you're doing a forward lunge, and then you're stepping back to where you started. Think of how you have to push off of the ground for that to happen. Versus if you're doing a forward walking lunge, how when you come up, you're actually pushing yourself forward to keep going. So all these little variations matter when you're having discomfort and you're trying to figure out how much force do I want going to a particular area from the movement, but then also how the movement is being performed.
Right. And I think too, the last point I have with all of this is it's a good reminder that it's not that you have to stop lunging in this way. It's just, especially if you're newer to weightlifting like Gina is, it's just finding like what's almost comfortable for your body to get used to that movement and then easing into and building up in the different ways too. It's not that Gina has to never use a barbell again in the way like with a lunge or a forward lunge or a reverse lunge. It's that maybe you need to ease in to that by getting comfortable in your body used to the lunging movements with other types of weight. You know what I mean? And so it's not that you have to completely never use that specific movement. It's that like there's variations and variation is good.
Right. And the building up process too, like we talked about the load on a barbell of doing it, but the load itself of what does your goblet squat look like? What does your front squat, your back squat look like? Because moving into a split stance squat or a lunge, it should be more of an advanced movement than when you have bilateral stance with both legs taking weight through them.
Yeah.
Like you go into a lunge, it's not a single leg movement, but it's closer to being a single leg movement.
Yeah. I remember this is just a little story, but I remember working out with somebody who I'd never worked out with before, but it was just like a small group and I was leading it for whatever reason. And the person, I just asked, like, does everybody have a baseline knowledge of these certain movements? Because if you don't, I'm not going to program those specific movements. And everyone was like, yeah, we're good, whatever. The one person, I don't know if they thought that they knew how to do a lunge, but they were almost doing a curtsy lunge. Like that's how narrow their stance was. And then when they were lunging, their knee was almost touching like their back knee was almost touching the front foot. That's how like narrow it was in every direction. And I just remember thinking like, okay, well you say you have a baseline knowledge of a lunge. That's not how I would do it, but like okay, if you're able to do it, like whatever. For Gina and for other people listening, if you're newer to lunging, having a coach just show you some of this stuff is going to go a long way so that you know not like for injury prevention or anything like that, but really just for like optimization of how to lunge. And so knowing like how to do it is going to help you as well. And hopefully these little tips that we've shared can help with like the discomfort side of things as well.
Yeah, and any movement, we'll stick with the lunge, it is a tool. But in order to use a tool, you need to know what the goal is of using that tool. If I just give you a hammer, the assumption is going to be, I'm just going to go smash nails with this thing. Maybe I want you to go pull nails out of it, and smashing those nails is working against the goal, right? So it's just a tool that you need to know the intention, because a lunge itself, it can be used for strength, it could be used for power, it could be used for endurance, it could be used for balance. And knowing that, like, if you're using weights, the goal is strength or potentially power. But knowing that, like, we're not after balance, and where you position your feet in doing the lunge matters, because like a wider base of support is going to be more optimal to be able to withstand the forces of a high load. If you're doing this like tightrope lunge step and then back, like at that point you are working on balance. And if you're working on balance, you're not going to be able to load it heavy, right? So it's like, what is the intention? And I'm guilty of doing this early in my career of like a single leg deadlift. And like you can't really load a single leg deadlift because what's the limiting factor? Balance. And if we're going to load it, like let's use a landmine where there's a little bit more of balance, but better yet, like if I'm using that to work on balance, then let's work on balance with that. If we're going to be working on strength, then let's use a split stance RDL or bilateral RDL to get higher loads into that area to truly work on strength. And the reason split stance would just be you want to bias one side more than the other side. Like the injured side, you may want to get that stronger to catch up to the non-injured side. So you want to do a split stance in order to get that. But keep the goal the goal. Know why the tool is being used and what the purpose or the intention is of using that tool.
Ka-chow, ka-chow, ka-chow!
Sprint time?
Yeah, it's hope story time. Ka-chow!
Hope story time.
I will say,
go ahead.
To the younger listeners, and by younger I mean like my age, maybe mid-20s, because Dylan's a little bit older in his 30s, and so he didn't watch this show. But it reminds me of iCarly, random dancing. Again, you didn't watch this show, but on iCarly, they would go random dancing, and then everyone would have to dance, and it was just like a random button. Yeah, Dylan's dancing. Let's go. So I feel like the ka-chow and like the sprint time is also like random dancing, but Hope Story ka-chow.
Hope Story ka-chow. I will kick off the Hope Story. I have a very, very simple one. Goose on the roof.
Goose on the roof. Goose on the roof.
So we were getting ready to head out this past weekend, and Brandy opened the front door and just bursted out laughing. And I'm like, well, like, what's so funny? And she's like, you gotta come see this. You gotta come see this. So I go to the front of the house, look out the door, and never have seen this in my life before. People may have seen this and be like, oh, okay, it's not that funny. I find it hilarious because I didn't even think that this could happen. But like a Canadian goose was literally sitting on our neighbor's roof. Like one was on our neighbor's roof and then another one was on our other neighbor's roof. And they're just sitting there like staring at each other, making their weird goose noises.
Yeah.
And then we were out for a run the other night and I just heard this loud thud. And it sounded like a basketball like smacking against the roof. And it was a goose landing on our neighbor's roof again. Like it's not graceful. And I don't know why it's been happening like in our neighborhood. I don't know if it happens in other neighborhoods, but we've just been getting all of these geese landing on people's roofs and then just sitting up there. And it's hilarious because it's not a small bird.
Yeah, and it's not a flat surface. Like the roof is very much like slanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Just seeing a goose on the roof, it's just a funny sight.
Yeah. Bringing us joy.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna share a different Hope Story, but because you brought up the animals, I'm gonna share this one instead. We basically live in a zoo. It is so funny. Like I just am calling it like the Caswell Zoo to all my friends, but we have baby geese right now in our yard. We had baby mice or like field mice or moles or something like that in the yard. There's baby groundhogs in the yard. The bees are back. There's like ducks along the way. I'm pretty sure I saw like a baby blue heron the other day as well. We saw eagles recently. Like it is a zoo in our yard. And
we saw a baby fox one morning
yes,
too.
A fox. Like it's been really cool. So we used to live like down in the valley in our town, and there was just a lot of population, so we would see a lot of squirrels.
The valley gives a perception of like a nice, beautiful. It was the south side of a struggling city.
South side of a struggling city that had a lot of people and a lot of squirrels, but not a lot of other animals.
And a lot of crime.
And a lot of crime, where now we get to live in this like nice little neighborhood and we have a zoo here. Not an official one, but in our backyard. And it's been really it's been fun getting to have like joy and wonder towards God's nature and the things that he's created. So that's my little Hope Story.
Yeah, it makes me envision back to Disney movies or Pixar movies of like Disney princesses with all these little animals on their arm and opening the window and singing a little song and all the little geese coming in.
Yeah, every time I see the groundhogs, that's what I want. I just imagine that we're all just frolicking in the field together. I love them.
Yes. Well, thank you for listening, Gina. Thank you for submitting your question. Have a great week. And remember, every day is not just a day to become hopeful, but an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Know podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Know podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.